Good afternoon and welcome everyone. And I'm pleased to welcome to speak to us David Oliver, who's the Transport Lead for PA Consulting, and he's going to be talking to us about bringing agile approaches to the highway sector. David, thank you.
Hi everyone. So I'm going to walk around a little bit, so apologies. Firstly, I'm David Oliver. I'm the Head of Transport for PA Consulting. I'm here to talk to you about Agile because we've done some really interesting research on organisational agility and how the Agile mindset is coming through different industries. So we've looked at 500 executives and we've asked them how they're becoming more agile, how they're delivering faster, what are the key challenges they're facing. And actually, we had some really interesting findings. So first up, over 50% of the executives we spoke to think the best days of their company are behind them. And 1 in 6 of them think their companies won't exist in 5 years' time. And 70% of them, and this is the last bit, and this is the bit that really this talk's all about, 70% of them are struggling to deal with the pace of change. And they're really, really facing that challenge down. So, Agile is one of the ways that the organisations we're speaking to are dealing with this today. So first up, we're going to look at learning from spaghetti and marshmallow. Does anyone know the spaghetti game? Yes? Nodding? So the game is, you're given a set of spaghetti, you're given string, you're given sellotape, and you're asked to build the highest tower you can within a defined time limit, and the tower has to be able to hold a marshmallow on top. So, it should be a game that engineers excel in. It should be a game for the road sector, for the construction industry to smash out of the park. Failing that, should be for MBAs, maybe management consultants. Any ideas who comes top? Kindergarten children. So, why do kindergarten children beat trained engineers, beat management consultants, beat people who've gone through different business schools? The really interesting thing about this game, it's got a massive data set. There's loads of learning behind it, there's loads of analysis, and actually a lot of people studied how the children behave and what it is that allows them to build the higher structures. And they actually act in a really agile way. They sort of act like a bit of a swarm. So those of you who've got young children, you see them at play, it doesn't really make sense from the outside looking in. They've studied it, they grab stuff, they test it, they move around, they abandon things that are failing, they collaborate on the things that are succeeding. Really, really interesting behaviour, and actually, in a timed condition, that testing and that iteration is the thing that allows them to succeed. And this is why we fail. This is why grown-ups don't. So, Taylorism and Fordism. Redefining how work's done, massive increases in productivity, completely changed the way that work is defined, how flow's done. Fordism, manufacturing, democratised the car, democratised transport, really. But it's now broken. Fordism, there's always been a tension with assembly line working. You know, you've got these very, very defined roles. They are very dull. You go iteratively do the same thing over and over again, and you produce something at very low cost to a very, very small tolerance of the quality threshold. And that's great. But that's not going to work in the future. It's not going to get us the best staff we need. It's not going to attract and retain the real talent who are going to transform the highways going forward. And this is why we need that talent. So, any thoughts on what organisations had identified as their biggest threat in our survey? So, multi-industry, 500 C-suite people, what's the biggest threat? Come on, help me out here. Shout out. Staff costs? No. Technology? No. Brexit? No. But thank you for bringing Brexit in. So, customers. Customers were the biggest threat facing organisations. And that's a bit daunting given that these are big multinational organisations and actually they're the most concerned about their customers. And the thing that's really concerning them is actually their customers' demands. What their customer wants, their customers' expectations are going to shift away and they're not going to be able to respond fast enough to keep in business. This is my favourite slide, so I'm just going to let it play for a while and talk. The answer to that is actually becoming more agile as an organisation, being able to adapt to change faster, just as the birds are doing. that movement and adaptation to stimuli, the changing direction at a moment's notice. Actually, there's a lot in that, and that's the basis of organisational agility. The research we did found 5 key areas that really agile organisations, the best in class, the ones that are generating the most profit, actually have. I'm going to take you through those and then quickly on to what that might mean for the highways sector. I'm causing this man a nightmare on the side here. I'm going to stand still for a second. Total customer centricity. Being really, really focused on your customer and what your customer really needs. So that's not having a person with customer in their job title on the C-suite. It's not putting a customer lead into each of your big directorates and telling them to make sure that the product is customer focused. It's genuinely rearranging your business to focus solely on the customer and what they need and how you're going to deliver value for them. Shorter time to value. So the Agile Manifesto came out of IT development, Utah, 2001, Ski Lodge, very cool, very trendy. Actually, the lessons of it apply really, really sharply, I think, to the road sector and the way that technology and digital and the customer are going to challenge it. So being faster with time to value, getting your organisation running at a punchy sprint cadence. So that's typically a 2-week cadence, really sharply focused on actually what value do you deliver. And at the end of that, and I've done this in transformation programs, and it's really uncomfortable, actually, really, really uncomfortable. At the end of 2 weeks, you all gather around and you have a demonstration and you show what value you've delivered. And it's a really, really sharp way of focusing the mind on actually, are you delivering real value in that 2 weeks? Is that day-long board really the thing that you should be doing with your time to deliver value for your customer? It's quite transformative and it's very, very uncomfortable. So, startup culture. What I don't mean is guys with beards in biker shorts ordering cereal from a bar in Hoxton. What I do mean is motivating people. So actually having a really clear visionary goal of what you're looking to achieve and then managing with outcomes. Not with thousands and thousands of KPIs. Not with a contract specified to the very nth degree of every single detail of anything that's ever going to be delivered. And that's really difficult. That's really difficult for a sector that's got a lot of public money flowing into it. And public money, and I'm a former senior civil servant, I was a child of the PMDU generation. The sort of mantra of if it's not measured, it's not getting done, hasn't really shifted out of Whitehall. And actually that forcing that change and fighting for the ability to be measured on outcomes, not on every single process, not on every single KPI and step towards an outcome, is a real challenge. But I think it will be really, really worth it. So, responsiveness to change. Changing the roads is not fast. You know, the long-term strategy is a great thing. The funding settlement is a great thing for the suppliers, for the tier 1s, 2s, etc. But the ability to then pivot and change what's being delivered, you know, the ability to get things through change control and formal governance is a nightmare. It could be better. It's done better in many, many places that are safety critical, in many places with large capital investment. So I think there's something there that's really worth reflecting on. Simplified organisation. So this goes back to Fordism, back to the shape of your organisation, back to the culture of your organisation. There's a lot of large, monolithic, siloed delivery organisations out in the sector. There isn't a lot of talking across them. There is a lot of baronessies. There's a lot of sharp elbows. It's hard. Looking at work as something that a team comes together to deliver an outcome on, rather than something that someone at the top of, with chief at the start of their job title, tasks someone to task someone to task someone, and that it will be delivered in my line and then handed over to the next one. I think we're a long way from that. But actually, when you see it changing, it makes a massive difference. So, as an example, the automotive industry, one of the big German automotive manufacturers trialled this, looking at how do they optimize the development of a new car model. So car models, it's safety critical, it's got really hard engineering, it needs construction, it needs to be repeatable, lots of similarities with the sector. They took 2 years off their time to develop a car and get it to market. And that's transformative for cost and for profit. And there's similar lessons, I think, and similar things that could be done across roads. Next section is about some stuff that you could try. So it's been quite negative in places, and then there's quite a lot of this is what the best are doing. What does that actually mean for the sector? What could be done now that might alter things? This is an easy one to say. Change the way you manage work and teams. Actually, really coming away from that top-down Fordist culture of just tasking straight through and changing the sprint cadence, changing the way you engage with your people, changing what they're focused on is a massive challenge. Culturally, it's a massive challenge. You need C-suite sponsorship. You need your CEO ideally on board with it. But actually, the change that it can bring and the way that you can see the empowerment turn up in staff, in organisations, is phenomenal when you get this right. So, breaking the problem down into parts. I think one of the big challenges for the sector is at times we see a really hard and difficult problem, and then we try and boil the ocean and solve it all. I think autonomous vehicles is the one that sticks in my head, where there was a lot of talk for a long time about autonomous vehicles, but there wasn't a lot of anything being done. You know, honourable exceptions out in Greenwich and things like that, you know, but it wasn't people saying, there's a load of things we're going to need and I can solve one of them. There was a lot of time spent agonising about what the right thing to do, what the right standards were going to be, who were going to define them, but actually value for customers, not so much. So, last one, take a risk. I can see the smirking starting in the audience already. This is, again, easier said than done, but you're not going to get innovation and you're not going to get transformative change without changing something and taking some risk. It's risky to change the way you task your staff. It's risky to change the way you organise and break down a problem. It's very risky to bring in trendy digital thinking and apply it to big infrastructure with big waterfall programs. But actually, you can do it in a controlled way, you can do it in a small way, and it can have a really transformative effect. I'm back on my favourite slide. It's a really, really critical time for the sector, I think. It's transfixing, isn't it, Parish? Actually, being able to be at that pivot point where there's a load of money coming into the sector, there's a load of investment, there's a massive delivery programme, customer expectations are going through the roof, there's a load of digital that's need to work on the network. This is the time to do it. This is the time to seize the opportunity and change. I think organisational agility is what will be needed. And I think the people who adopt it fastest and first will win. Cool. Thank you all very much. Paresh, go on. You've got a planted question. Well done.
No, it's not a planted question. But David, one of the things that you talked around, your 5 things about customers. The thing that keeps coming back to me, right, is do we know what our customers are, right? And I keep thinking, when we ask customers, it's usually a huge demographics, right? And we don't tend to ask the younger people. We disregard the younger people. That's the demographics that we've got to follow, right? And too often we follow like lemmings, right? Someone who's come up with an idea, but they're too out of date. So how do you cope with that one?
You test things. You test them and you talk to the customers. So rather than, you develop a big scheme and you do it in a silo, you've got your plan signed off and you go hell for leather across it, you keep testing and you keep testing what you're delivering and you keep refining it. And it's a very iterative delivery methodology. I think your point also suggests, and I think you're right, you need to spend a lot more time getting to know your customer, really getting to know them, asking them questions. And it's much easier, there's much more innovative and exciting real-time ways to do this. I really like the customer panel Highways England have got. I've used it once or twice on jobs. It gives some really interesting results, but it's a very snapshot. You've got one piece of data at one point in time. I think we need to do better and more frequently testing and refining. Brilliant. Well, thank you all very much.